So we have finally maxed out the Vanguard. I told you guys I was going to pretty much get every single character completed, and the Vanguard was the final in my list of getting the Marines done. Now while playing the Vanguard, finally getting him to level 25, I was a little bit lost on what to do with this character, seeing that he was a very unique type of Marine compared to the others. And after finally leveling him up, getting all the gear and weapons that I needed, and just putting a build together, I think I put together the best build that you're going to have for the Vanguard. He's a very unique Marine that needs a very unique build, so let's dive right on in. Alright, so before we dive into the video, I did want to take the time out and talk about the Vanguard just a little bit because, you know, I'm one of those creators that want to give you guys my personal, honest opinion on things. I'm not really going to just be like, oh, this is great and this is amazing. You know, I always like to give a real feedback on the character, just so you guys have a better idea of how to play this Marine because he's very different from many others in the game. If you don't want to listen to this, I have it timestamped for you to go on to the actual build. But let's talk about the Vanguard just a little bit. So from my perspective, the Vanguard is a character that doesn't really do anything uniquely well. What I mean by this specifically is, one, he's very heavily reliant on his Melta. If you're using any of the other two weapons, they're not necessarily very good. Now that is not really something of any player's fault. The dev team will have to balance those weapons a little bit better because they do need a buff. But with that in mind, the Melta is going to be a weapon that you're primarily going to be using on him because it's by far the best option for him. And without it, I think your damage will be generally significantly less than any other Marine. If you take those same weapons away from the heavy or the tactical, they are still functionally really strong. Not as strong as they are now with those weapons, but they're still strong and relevant and definitely has their own place. That's where the Vanguard doesn't necessarily does. Now, with that in mind, what is his playstyle? Well, his playstyle is very unique and simple. What you're going to be basically doing with Vanguard is you're going to be jumping in, you're going to be disrupting enemies, you're going to try to debuff them, you're going to try to get finishers to give your allies the ability to pretty much be able to use their abilities as much as possible, and you're just going to stay alive. His role is a character that is something of a melee based support that enables teammates by debuffing and resetting their cooldowns. This playstyle is not something I enjoy, and it's probably not going to be a playstyle for every player, but I do see some players who really enjoy Vanguard, be that because they are using the Melta and they understand that he needs it, or they very likely didn't play any other Marine and they think the Vanguard is outstanding or for whatever reason. But ultimately, that's going to be the playstyle you should expect with him. Alright, so we are on the build section of the video, and I'm just going to give you guys a brief understanding of what we're trying to do with the build as we go through it. So let's dive right on in. So first things first, we're going to be using upper hand in our first row. What this does is after a perfectly timed parry or dodge, you do not lose control when taking heavy hits. Now the reason why this is valuable is because his role is going to be kind of getting in the face of enemies and kind of being something of a disruptor to some degree while dueling them in a weird way. This is going to help you pretty much stand your ground while you're doing your little dueling thing, while your allies is dealing damage. The thing is, he does deal a ton of damage himself, and sometimes enemies will like hit at him and then you can parry and then continue to use your Melta while regenerating your health, because he's actually pretty decent at staying alive in close range. Next, we're going to be picking up close combat focus. You take 20% less melee damage, but 10% more range damage. Most of the time he's going to be just jumping in and trying to get in the face of enemies, and taking 20% less melee damage is really nice, especially when you're taking the very few bosses that are here in the game, and this can help you quite a bit. I know some people really like duelists and you can take it if you want, but the reality is parry is very easy in this game, and I don't think you need a parrying window, and having 20% less damage taken is, in my opinion, significantly more important, especially when you get to the later levels or in higher difficulty. Next, we're going to be going consecutive execution. Killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores equipment charge by 1 with a 180-second cooldown. This definitely needs to be a 60-second cooldown. The reason why I'm picking this is, well, the other two are just not very good. You can go something like honed reactions, which would be probably the best second option, where you have a higher perfect dodge window, but perfect dodging doesn't feel that hard in this game. And retribution, in my opinion, is probably one of the worst things to have in a game. Whenever you get hit or knocked down or grab, you deal 20% more damage for 10 seconds. I don't really like things like that, and honestly I don't feel like I melee much with him, even though he does get a lot of melee perks, because his melee is not necessarily the best in the world, and just using the Melta is way more effective than just using your melee, in my opinion. Next, we're going to be picking up Inner Fire, and this is probably going to be his biggest contribution to the team outside of the debuff coming up. And whenever you kill enemy with a finisher, you'll give 15% charge on their abilities by 15%, which is really good. Again, it's a great perk. I still think the sniper does it better, but this is still a solid perk that you should pick up. Next, under our gear perks, we're going to be picking up Shockwave. Diving Kick additionally deals damage in a 5-meter radius. This is going to make it so whenever you actually dive in, you can kind of like maybe hit things and they kind of like blow up a little bit. It's hard to say. It's like a little shockwave. I mean, it's the name of the ability, right? So you can kind of deal a little bit of residual AoE damage, and it's kind of nice, and it'll set you up really well for this next one, which is Tip of the Spear. Enemies hit by your diving kick take 15% more damage for 10 seconds, 15% more range damage, sorry. And so this is going to be great for whenever you dive in, Melta, and then, you know, the whole group just pretty much explodes. Once again, it's going to be your best combination. You probably saw this in a lot of other builds because honestly, it's kind of the only thing he really has going for him. So yeah, that's why I would be picking up. And then finally, we're going to be getting the combat readiness in the final row because we want that launcher off cooldown as much as possible so that we can keep debuffing and we can keep dealing AoE damage. And we can just keep setting ourselves up for the finishers so that we can help our team as much as humanly possible. For our signature ability, honestly, I think most of his signatures are actually really bad. I don't like them at all. His first one is okay, but we talked about this a second ago in the beginning. It's really hard to get the thing to latch onto the right target sometimes. The targeting is really weird. An ally can run up and take the kill, and then you lose your charge. His grapnel launcher is not very good. They really need to rework it. So this on paper would be great, but in practice is not good at all. As for Adrenaline Rush, I do, as I say every video, I go research what players think, what other creators make, pretty much the consistency of certain perks. Now, a lot of players tend to think that Adrenaline Rush is a great perk, and while I think it does have its value, I'll try to elaborate to you why you don't need it. First off, you're going to be using the multi-Melta. I don't really see a reason why any Vanguard player or creator would suggest using anything other than that. The other two weapons are just not great. Now, the reason why the Melta is important to this conversation is because if you understand the uncontested to contested health mechanic, then you'll know that once you actually start to burst enemies, you'll be able to heal your uncontested health and get so much health that you don't necessarily need a way of sustaining your health. Now, I have seen people suggest that this is a bug. I have not seen an official dev say anything. I've not seen anything from Focus Entertainment. No one has ever made a suggestion that it is a bug. That's just a rumor people are just throwing out there because, well, actually, I don't know why they're throwing it out there. But as far as I've seen so far, this is how the mechanic works, and the mechanic actually makes sense. I have some examples on screen now where I purposefully get hit and I will basically re-burst my health up all the way to full because I killed and hit multiple enemies. And even when I face off against bosses and I'm like tanking them and stuff, I can actually sustain my health pretty well because of the fact that I used the mechanic effectively. You can do this with med kits. I do it with med kits all the time. I have one med kit, activate the med kit, boom, I burst my health because I shoot a group of enemies. You gotta be smart on how you use it. But this is why you don't necessarily need that perk, because that perk is going to give you healing when you destroy like a majorous enemy, and you can just heal passively if you just position well. Instead, I'm going to be using Emperor's Blessing because it's significantly better. Taking lethal damage restores all armor instead of incapacitating you. The cooldown is 180 seconds, which is reasonable. That's kind of crazy that the incapacitation is 180, and then the equipment charge on this one is 180. That's pretty insane. I think this needs to be buffed a little bit. If you don't feel comfortable using this and you don't understand the uncontested mechanic, then you can go the Adrenaline Rush based thing. But generally speaking, you shouldn't really be dueling things most of the time. You should just be killing things and getting it over with. Your Melta is going to push them away, and then you're going to be able to heal your uncontested health with the Melta anyway. Now for our primary, we're going to be using the Aphelion Liberation. This gives us extra ammo, so this is what's really important in my opinion for this build. For the roll, we're taking the entire top row. This is going to give us more magazine size. This is going to give us a full round of mag whenever our health drops below 30%, which is really nice. Sometimes it actually does happen. And that will help you sustain a little bit. You can even go drop down to 30% health if you need it, and then you'll get the ammo back. Let them hit you one more time like a little pleb, and then blow them up, and then you'll fully heal your health. So it's actually really nice if you understand the healing mechanic. We're going to be using Great Might. Damage is increased by 10% against Terminus enemies. We're going to be using Divine Might, more damage. We're going to be picking up extended mag for more size of the mag to help benefit this and just have more ammo in our initial shot. After the first reload, we get 10% more damage with first shot, and then we're going to get elusive fire after a perfectly timed dodge, which you're going to be doing a good amount of. Your fire rate is going to be increased by 25%, and then you get perpetual fire for more increased fire rate. It's a really good line, and this is my go-to in probably most builds because it's really good. For a pistol, once again, as I say in every build video, you don't really need a pistol because you're using your primary weapon most of the time. But if we had to pick anything, I'm going to be going the Affiliate Liberation Alpha once again. For our perk tree, we're going to be taking everything at the bottom. This is going to give us more damage against Terminus level enemies. This is going to give us more damage when you perfectly dodge, which we're going to do a good amount of. This is going to give us some extra recoil that you don't need after a gun strike. We're going to get some more damage. We're going to get a better magazine. Whenever you do kill a ton of enemies when you're at low health, you're going to get some health back. Extended mag for more of a magazine, and then we're going to get Divine Might for more damage once again. What I would recommend going with is the Affiliate Liberation Alpha knife, and then you're going to take the entire top row because in very, very, very few circumstances, sometimes you actually run out of ammo. I know it's crazy, but sometimes it actually happens. But this is going to give you some extra damage when you have armor. This is going to give you an AoE on your Skull Crusher effect. This is going to give you some more damage. This is going to give you the stab ability. This is not that important. I don't really like these two skills that much for this. This one would probably be better for AoE, but you don't need it. And this would be better for a single target, but it's not even that great. Chaos Slayer for more chaos damage. Then Tide of Battle. This is actually pretty decent. You get some more AoE on your Whirlwind Slash. You pick up Terminus Slayer for more damage against Terminus level enemies. And then most importantly, Hard Target. This is actually the best part of the knife. While performing a light combo, you take 15% less range damage, and it helps offset whenever you're getting like shot at when you're facing off against stronger enemies. Because I mean, really, you shouldn't be using your knife that much, but you can if you want to. And there you have it. That is my Vanguard build. I feel like this is probably the best he's gonna get. I think he's a cool Marine on paper, but I don't think he plays that well compared to a lot of the other Marines. He's more of a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And unfortunately, I feel like in Space Marines, you need to be a master of something because, well, there's others that's going to master things. So you need to try to have a good role. Cool character, but definitely my least favorite Marine in the entire lineup. With that said, that has been all the characters in Space Marines 2. Let me know what kind of build you'd like to see in the future. I am working on something with the Sniper as well as the Assault. Once again, thanks for checking out the video. Leave me some respectful comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video very soon.